Hello and welcome to 60 Seconds with Sergio. I am your host, Sergio Cabanas, attorney at law here in Florida. Thank you for joining me today. Today's question is, Sergio, I've heard about this concept called alimony, where one spouse is made to pay the other spouse some kind of financial support after a divorce. What exactly is alimony in the state of Florida, and how does it work? Well, we start answering that very good question by first looking at exactly what is alimony. Well, alimony is the legal obligation that's imposed by the court on one spouse to pay the other spouse some kind of financial support after a marital separation or after a divorce. Well, the courts can look at many different factors in determining whether alimony should be awarded in any given case, but it really boils down to the two main factors. The two big factors are, first, the financial need of one of the spouses for financial support and the ability of the other spouse to pay that financial support. Lawyers call that need versus ability. The second big factor that the courts look at is the length of the marriage. First, let's talk about the need versus ability factor. Well, we look at the standard of living that the spouses enjoyed during the marriage. We look at, for example, the housing and how expensive the area of that housing, the size of the home, etc. We also look at the general expenses of the parties, what kind of expenses they spent, for example, on vacations, for meals, for entertainment, etc. So after analyzing the need of one spouse for that financial support, of course, we turn our attention to the ability of the other spouse to pay that financial support. Normally, we look at whether that spouse can maintain his or her lifestyle in addition to paying for the other spouse's lifestyle. So after looking at this need versus ability factor, we look at the other factor, which is the length of the marriage. Normally, under Florida law, I would say that the marriage would fall in one of three buckets, if you will. So we look at the first bucket, and that's what I call the short-term bucket. If the length of the marriage was 7 years or less, it falls in this bucket, which is a short-term bucket, and that means that not much by way of alimony is awarded, except under very unusual special circumstances. Then we have the other end of the spectrum, the third bucket, which is the long-term bucket. That's usually defined as a marriage lasting 17 years or more. And in that bucket, the spouse may be looking at paying permanent alimony, and that means alimony or financial support is paid to the other spouse for life. Then we have the middle bucket, which is, I call it the gray area bucket. In that bucket, it's the length of the marriage is anywhere between 7 years up to 17 years in length. There is kind of a gray area where there's no presumption one way or another. So it's not like in the short-term bucket when there's no presumption for any alimony, and it's not in the long-term bucket where permanent alimony is considered, but rather there's going to be some type of shorter-term alimony that's awarded depending on the specific circumstances of the cases that fall in that bucket. So there is one final point that I want to leave you with on this short video about alimony, and that is that it is possible to modify alimony and change it. What I mean by that is that in cases where alimony is awarded, it is possible to increase the alimony payments or decrease it depending on the circumstances of your case. For example, has there been a change of circumstances that was unanticipated, permanent, and involuntary? If so, you could be looking at a case where alimony could be reduced or increased depending on those circumstances. I hope this short video provided you some general guidance over a very complicated area of the law. As always, this is no substitute for an actual consultation with a knowledgeable attorney who can review the specific information relating to your case and provide you with the appropriate advice. Thank you again for joining me today, and as always, stay informed so you can stay strong.